AM 1460 WXBR, Peter Czymbor and Mike Pava here with you on this Tuesday morning. It is Tuesday, May 14th, 2013. 15 years ago on this day, May 14th, 1998, the final episode of the greatest and my favorite sitcom of all time, Seinfeld, aired. And joining us now to celebrate that sitcom is a man who played a role in the final episode and played a significant role in one of the best episodes of that television series in its 9-year run. He's known to his friends and family as Larry Thomas, but to the rest of the world, he is affectionately known as the Soup Nazi. Larry, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Larry, it's been 15 years since Seinfeld has gone off the air and almost 18 years since the episode debuted, titled The Soup Nazi, where you played the title character in that particular episode. Describe to us how your life changed pre- and post-Soup Nazi.
Well, post-Soup Nazi is the big change. I mean, it's almost hard to explain. I actually tried to explain it to Jerry about a year ago when we did a Super Bowl spot together. And it's like, all I could say is not an hour of my day goes by where I'm not somehow reminded about the Soup Nazi. You know, whether it's Facebook or emails or whatever, phone calls, things that happen. But it's certainly taken over my life. I was one guy before, and now I'm a different person, or at least I have a different life.
What was your acting career consisting of pre that episode of Seinfeld airing where you became known as the Soup Nazi?
Mostly theater. You know, what I used to call beg, borrow, and steal theater, because we'd put on our own plays and we'd beg for a spot to do it in. We'd borrow furniture and costumes, and sometimes we'd, you know, get behind Home Depot late at night and get some molding or something that we needed to put on the set. So, yeah, it was very, very, very different. And
was that the first television
Seinfeld,
which you've done?
I did a lot of TV.
Was that the first TV show that you did coming from a theater background?
No, I had done TV already, but I hadn't done a lot of it. You know, and nothing as big as a guest star on Seinfeld.
So let's talk a little bit about how you got the role on this episode of Seinfeld and what the role entailed before we talk about the finale of the TV show. Once again, you're listening to AM 1460 WXBR. We're chatting with Larry Thomas, the actor who portrayed the Soup Nazi on Seinfeld, a television program which aired its final episode 15 years ago today. Larry, the Soup Nazi was written by Spike Ferenston, who is actually from the Boston area where we are here in Brockton, Massachusetts, from West Bridgewater, which is actually a neighboring town from the location of our studio. It's actually where our transmitter is located, as a matter of fact. Your character was based on a real guy who owned a soup kitchen in New York, who seemed to be a little bit difficult with his customers. Did you have any inclination going into this episode portraying this character that it was based on a real person?
No, I had no idea. It had been a long time since I had been to New York at that point. And, you know, I'm from New York, but I hadn't been back in a while. So, no, I just thought it was a very interesting name for a character. And because there was nothing written down for me to look at before the audition, I just kind of made up my own thing. And coincidentally enough, it's pretty much what people see as the Soup Nazi today. I mean, that was my idea of just what a guy called the Soup Nazi might be like. Any similarities with Al Yeager is a coincidence, really. But it wasn't lost on Spike. I found out many years later what went on in the room, because an actor, you know, we come in, we audition, we're told to leave, and we have no idea what they talk about in there. And in that particular audition, it was interesting because they made me wait for a while and come back in. And Jerry, who had laughed pretty good when I first walked in and read, he wanted me to change it. And he just said, you know, I don't understand why the guy is so mean. Why don't you play it a little nicer, you know, give him a little more variety, you know. And so I tried to do it that way for him, and he didn't laugh much either. But I guess from what Spike told me about 10 years later is when I left the room, the big argument was everybody thought what I did was really funny, but Jerry was a little freaked out because of the extreme character I brought in, and then they were all a little they had trepidatiousness because of me being sort of unknown, where they had other known actors in mind, like Tony Shalhoub and Richard Libertini. And they left it up to Spike, and it was Spike that chose me. He just said, this is what the guy is like, So it was a really big coincidence that just by the name, the Soup Nazi, I got the whole picture of Al Yeagener. And probably because Spike and the Letterman writers are the ones that nicknamed him the Soup Nazi. So, being that a bunch of comedy writers nicknamed him, I got the same image from their nickname. So thank goodness for Spike, huh?
Now, I must be a student of Seinfeld because I've watched every episode at least 3 times, and I've even watched the extras and whatnot on the DVDs, which they released probably about 5 years ago at this point. And in the behind-the-scenes look at this episode on the DVD, Spike Ferenctin, the writer of the episode of Seinfeld called The Soup Nazi, which you starred in as the title character, he discussed years later when he co-wrote the movie B-Movie with Jerry Seinfeld. Jerry Seinfeld took Spike Ferenctin to visit the real Soup Nazi, who you mentioned by name moments ago, and apparently when they went to visit the real Soup Nazi at his actual soup kitchen in New York, he went into a profanity-laced tirade against Jerry Seinfeld for, quote-unquote, ruining his life. And Jerry Seinfeld, I guess, gave what was described as a mock sarcastic apology. Have you ever actually had contact with the actual Soup Nazi, and what was he like, and what was your rapport with him, considering you portrayed him on television?
Portrayed him or betrayed him? No, he actually, it was really funny. I was in Long Island, actually, doing a play at the Westbury Music Fair, and I went into Manhattan just for a day off, and I was running in the park, and I was coming down 8th Avenue, and I saw his place. So I went and I ducked my head in there, and I was clean-shaven at the time for this play, but I just introduced myself. He was in there, preparing, and I just said, look, I'm the guy that played that role on the TV show that you hate so much. I just wanted to say hello. And he actually invited me to step into the kitchen, and he was really nice, actually. He had no animosity towards me, and he actually said he had appeared on Oprah for some kind of a charity canned soup drive, and they showed a clip, the first scene that they always show, and he thought I was funny.
So he was not Nazi-like to you?
No, not at all. He was nice, and then I said, what time do you open? I should come and wait in your line and get your soup so I can tell the story, And so he said noon, and I did. I went back and I stood online. It was very uneventful because nobody recognized me because I was totally clean-shaven, no mustache or anything. But I remember I stepped up, and his soups had different prices, and being on a budget, I ordered the cheapest soup, which was like chicken and vegetables or something like for $7. And he looked at me and he goes, "You want the seafood bisque?" And I said, "Okay, I'll have the seafood bisque." And so he gave it to me, with the fruit and the chocolate and the bread. I got everything. Was
it for the same price as the original soup you asked for, or did he up the price a little?
No, he didn't up the price at all.
Oh, very nice of him.
And I went, and it was really fantastic. I ate it with a friend of mine that I was doing the play with, and we both agreed it was pretty unbelievable. And then the next day, we were leaving New York on our way somewhere else with the play, and I stopped in and said goodbye to him, and he said, "Do you want to take some soup with you?" So he gave me a different soup to take with me, and so I got to eat his soup on the way. So it was pretty fun, actually, and I don't think anybody would have cared because we didn't fight or argue or anything, but
still would have been a cool story to tell.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, you're listening to AM 1460 WXBR. Peter Czymbor here with you on this Tuesday morning, chatting with Larry Thomas, the man who portrayed the Soup Nazi on Seinfeld on this 15th anniversary of Seinfeld's final episode airing in its initial run on NBC. Larry, correct me if I'm wrong, but the actual guy the Soup Nazi was portrayed on, who you mentioned by name moments ago, he actually sort of parlayed some of the popularity of the character you portrayed on Seinfeld into some business ventures for himself.
Yeah, he still is, actually. Some years ago, he franchised the whole soup line into the original Soup Man. And they did a lot of franchise restaurants all over the country, but they didn't do well. I'm pretty sure all of them closed up. I haven't been to a city lately where there's still one anywhere except Manhattan. And then they finally wised up, I guess, and they reopened the original location, his original location, as the Manhattan Original Soup Man restaurant. And so I guess they're doing okay there, but they've also packaged the soup for supermarkets in, I don't know, they're like packages. They're not in cans or boxes, but like soft packages. And a few months ago, or maybe about a year ago, I found out that Shaquille O'Neal is his big celebrity spokesman, and they actually have a commercial on the internet with Shaquille O'Neal saying, no soup for you, soup for me, or something like that. And then Reggie Jackson joined the team, and I hear that recently Jason Alexander joined the team.
Why have you not joined the team yet? Why have they not inquired about you being a part of their spokes team for this new soup line?
Originally, when they first started the business team, the CEO or one of the board guys on the business team did contact me, and they wanted me to do appearances for them at food conventions and stuff. And I won't even tell you what they offered because it was ridiculous. Nobody has ever offered me so little money to do a personal appearance. I always get much more of an offer than that. And they didn't want to sign any kind of agreement of profit sharing or anything that would happen if my presence or appearances helped out the company. So I just said no. I said that's a real sucker's deal. Nobody would do that. If I was to tie myself to your company, I'd want a piece of the action in case it goes through the roof. So they called back one more time after that to ask me again, and with my manager, actually. I didn't speak to them, alone. But again, we said, that's ridiculous. They still didn't want to up the stakes of the deal at all. So I don't know. Maybe they're upset with me about that, but they have not contacted me since. So, and I think it's interesting that they have Jason because I know years ago I did a charity event with Jason, and he didn't want to do any kind of Soup Nazi parody or reference or anything.
He didn't want to do it with you being there at this charity function, or just not in general?
Well, with me. We were giving away items from a raffle, and I said, "Do you want to do a little Soup Nazi routine or joke or something?" And he said, "No, I don't." So now, though, he's connected with the original Soup Man, so I have no idea what that's about.
Do you think they offered him a similar deal as what they offered to you?
I doubt it. I can't imagine him working for that. I'm sure he must be making much more. Or maybe he bought into the company with those other sports celebrities. I'm not really sure.
It is interesting. Another Seinfeld character that I can think of, an actor who portrayed a character that was based on a real person, was, and the name of the actor escapes me now, but it's on the tip of my tongue, the guy who portrayed Jay Peterman on the show, who was based on a real guy.
John O'Hurley.
John O'Hurley, who later hosted the Family Feud game show. He actually bought into the Jay Peterman actual company and owns a piece of Jay Peterman, which I always found hysterical.
Yeah, wasn't that? That was amazing.
Now, going back to your episode of Seinfeld, once again we're chatting with Larry Thomas, the man who portrayed the Soup Nazi on Seinfeld back in 1995. That episode premiered. You were nominated for an Emmy for your work in that episode. I have to imagine that was the first award of that magnitude that you had ever been nominated for, considering most of your career prior to Seinfeld consisted of theater. What was that experience like?
It was a great experience. It was insane. I didn't make enough money from Seinfeld, of course, to quit my day job. And so I was still going to work every day. And people that I would deal with, I was a court investigator for a bail bond agency, and people that I would deal with in the courts would begin to recognize me, even though they had known me for 5 years doing the same job or more, almost 10 years. And, I began to wonder, what could I do with this? And it just, sparked my curiosity. I called the TV Academy and I just said, is there a category for an Emmy for a guy that guested on a show, or is it just series regulars? And they said, no, there's a guest actor category. So all I had to do is fill out an application and pay a fee to be on the ballot of the nominee ballot. And kind of forgot about it. I put a couple of tiny little ads in Variety and Reporter, all that I could afford, but little small ones. And the day that they were announcing the Emmys on TV, they didn't announce the guest actor category. And so I called the Academy and I just said, is it possible for you to read me the nominees? The nominees for the guest actor in a comedy series. And they read the list, and it was really funny because they saved my name for last.
Dramatic effect.
So it was quite the phone call. But, they said Tim Conway, Mandy Patinkin, Griffin Dunn, Harris Yulin, and Larry Thomas. And I just went like, oh, God. And the lady goes, is this you, Larry Thomas? And I said, yes. And she goes, oh, good, congratulations, So it was from there on, it was just lots of fun. Spike called me to congratulate me, and it was also, he was nominated for writing the episode, and it was his first solo nomination. He had been on the team of Letterman that was nominated before, but he was really excited to be solo nominee. And I don't know, we talked on the phone quite a bit, just going like, isn't this bizarre that we did this? It was his first script for Seinfeld. So it was like, we just did this, little thing, and both of us are up for an Emmy.
Turned out to be a classic.
And it was really cool. A lady, the production supervisor, who I think she's now on Castle, Nancy Sproul, called me one day, and she said, because I was going on the technical awards night. That's when they give away the guest actor awards. And she just said, I just wanted to let you know that for the awards show that you're going to, we want to send you a limo. So they sent me a stretch limo so that, I can be taken to the awards, which was very nice. And I remember on the way there, sitting in the limousine with my wife. I was married at the time to an actress, and we're just driving along, and I said, I get this feeling that the limo is going to pull over, the door is going to swing open, and there's going to be another guy there with a tuxedo going, okay, I don't know what happened. A little glitch in the universe, but you seem to be living my life right now. I'm supposed to be in that limo, so get out. It was just so surreal and unlike anything I had ever known. And I had some interviews with like Entertainment Weekly and Inside Edition, and it was just kind of crazy going from being nobody and thrust into that kind of life. Like, it didn't happen gradually, if you know what I mean.
Once again, we're chatting with Larry Thomas here on AM 1460 WXBR, the actor who portrayed the character of the Soup Nazi on Seinfeld, with today being the 15-year anniversary of Seinfeld's final episode airing on NBC. Larry, you mentioned moments ago that you had a real job, a day job, at the time you were portraying the character of the Soup Nazi on Seinfeld, and you did not make enough money on that one particular episode you guest starred in initially to quit your day job. What was your day job, and how did your coworkers react to you suddenly becoming a sensation?
Well, I worked for a surety company in the bail bond department as a court investigator, and there were two of us that worked there, and we were both actors. And it was a good, being an investigator was a good job for an actor because we were out in the field and we could go on auditions if we got them and things like that. So everyone in the company knew we were actors, and they would all come to see whatever plays we would do, small 99-seat theater. And they were kind of like, we were sort of their pet, They were always hoping for us, and they loved the fact that we were struggling actors and worked for their company. So when that all came about, it was unbelievable. They practically carried me on their shoulders. Everybody there was so proud of me, and they were just so excited about it.
I believe that Wayne Knight, who portrayed Newman on Seinfeld, also previously worked as a private investigator before he entered the acting field.
I didn't know that. That's amazing.
Is there any correlation between private investigation, detective work, and being an actor?
I would say so. You have to get people to do things by finessing them. You have to, even just working with the court, if you want to get a look at certain files or something, you have to ask in the right way and charm them in the right way, or else they won't let you see anything. So to gain access to information, you used your acting quite a bit and your ability to sort of play and improvise with whoever you were talking to. And they liked that in the bail bond company, too, because when they hired my partner and I and they knew we were actors, they said this might be a really good idea. So there is a little bit of that.
Once again, you're listening to AM 1460 WXBR. Peter Czymbor and Mike Pava here with you on a Tuesday morning. We're chatting with Larry Thomas, the Soup Nazi, here on the 15th anniversary of Seinfeld's final episode airing on NBC May 14, 1998. We're going to step aside for a quick breather. Mike Pava is going to provide us with a local news update. When we return, we'll have more with Larry Thomas, the Soup Nazi. Stick with us. AM 1460 WXBR, Peter Czymbor here with you on this Tuesday morning, joined once again by Larry Thomas, the man who portrayed the character of the Soup Nazi on Seinfeld, today, of course, being the 15-year anniversary of Seinfeld going off the air. Larry, your initial run as the Soup Nazi took place November of 1995. That is when the Soup Nazi episode aired, and there was really no inclination at the time that the Soup Nazi would be a recurring character, but the character did come back for one final appearance on what would be the final episode of the show, which aired 15 years ago today. Describe to us what the feel was when you got the call to be a part of the final episode, which ultimately had a plethora of guest stars from the show's past make appearances.
Well, I was actually doing my job that we discussed, and I was at a courthouse pulling some files and doing some work, and my manager called me on my cell phone, and she just said, I just got a call from Mark Hirschfeld's office, that's the casting office, and they want to know if you'd like to be a part of the Seinfeld final episode. And I just said, are you kidding me? Because, I went, it was almost 3 years without them doing a second Soup Nazi episode. And I just said, I'd love to. And she hung up the phone, and here's the way the story goes. As soon as she hung up the phone, Entertainment Weekly called and asked her if I was going to be a part of the Seinfeld finale, to which she said yes. We just agreed to it. And she hung up the phone, and the very next call was the casting office again, who said, oh, by the way, this is a major industry secret, like the biggest secret of all time. So don't tell anybody, and tell Larry, he's going to have to sign some confidentiality agreements. Don't tell anybody that he's going to be a part of the finale. And we had already blown it. So when Entertainment Weekly came out, they had a story about, well, at least we know that the Soup Nazi's going to be back.
Was there any backlash you received from anyone in the casting department as a result of that going out there?
No, thank God nobody said anything to me. I thought they were going to turn around and just fire me for that, and just say, well, now there's no need you being on it, whatever. But thank God nobody ever said anything to me about it. But it was weird because the very first day of work was a location scene. We shot it at Warner Brothers. It was the scene that had music over it when the jury was out. And they were kind of showing what everybody was doing in this little New England town. And, of course, if you remember, there was a little bed and breakfast, and the soup Nazi was serving soup to a few of the other characters like Poppy. And, Poppy wanted salt and pepper, so I took his soup away. And that was the first thing we did. And it was crazy. We had to drive into a covered parking lot, park our cars, and get in vans that had no windows, like secrecy, and drive into the studio, because there would be paparazzi everywhere trying to take pictures and see who was working on the finale. And that was really funny, too, because I was in the van alone with Grace Zabriskie, who played Susan's mom on Seinfeld, and we drove in there, and the van dropped us off at a sort of a wagon train of little honey wagons, all the dressing rooms for all the different characters. And I walked Grace to her little trailer, and she went in. And then I walked all the way around looking for a trailer that either said the Soup Nazi or Larry Thomas, and there wasn't one. So I got all the way back to her trailer, and she opened her door, and she said, "What's the matter?" And I said, "I think they forgot me. There's no trailer here for me." And she goes, "What? That's ridiculous. They wouldn't forget you." And she took me by the hand and marched me over to an AD, and she said, "Did you guys forget Larry's trailer?" And the AD said, "No, I hope not." So she went off for a few minutes, and when she came back, she goes, "No, it's right over here." And she took us to a trailer that said Yev Kasem on the side. And I went,
and you're right, that was an unveiling in the episode, the Soup Nazi's real name.
Yeah, and because they weren't giving us any scripts or anything, we didn't know what was said in the script. I think what they did was they faxed us our own lines only. So we were to memorize our own lines but not know anything else. And it was really funny. So then I found out that my name was now Yev Kasem, and we shot that scene, and then everything else we did was on Soundstage 9, where, they did everything else on Seinfeld.
Once again, we're chatting with Larry Thomas, the Soup Nazi, here on AM 1460 WXBR on the 15th anniversary of Seinfeld's final episode airing on NBC. Larry, giving the secret nature of the final episode very confidential, no one involved with the show or anyone in NBC wanted any spoilers to get out to the public. Do you think that such a secure set could even be accomplished in this day and age, given cell phone cameras, social media, Twitter, and things of that nature?
What you say is absolutely true. I'm sure it would be much, much harder. Because, no one really was taking cell phone pictures or cell phone video back then. I'm sure they would have had to do something crazy, like make us all turn in our cell phones or something. Part of that confidentiality agreement was we weren't allowed to tell even our spouses that we were doing it. And I remember a few of us, when we were signing our agreements, got a good laugh at that one. It's like, can you imagine, going somewhere every day for 5 days and not telling your wife where you're going?
She'd get a little suspicious, I would think.
Just a little. So that one wasn't going to fly. But you're right. That would be a lot harder today with everybody's texting and Twittering and doing all this stuff. I mean, the whole cell phone, video cell phone thing caused Michael Richards quite a bit of trouble years later. He found out the hard way that nothing is secret anymore.
And you certainly found out that what is said in a nightclub doesn't always stay in a nightclub with the advent of cell phone cameras and people that will distribute it like TMZ and whatnot. Once again, we're chatting with Larry Thomas, the Soup Nazi, here on AM 1460 WXBR. Any cool stories of being on the set for that final episode, reconnecting with some familiar faces who you may not have seen in a few years since the initial Soup Nazi episode aired, and meeting some other of the very memorable guest stars who were a part of that episode?
Yeah, that's what it was all about, really. That was the fun of it. First of all, meeting so many other actors who you knew their work. You had never worked with them, and then the fact that you were all on Seinfeld at different times, getting together and getting to know each other. I still have some of those relationships. Rennie Santoni and Liz Sheridan and Ian Abercrombie and I were good friends. He recently passed away, unfortunately. Brian George, who played Babu. I got to know so many people, and I always joke with my friends, but most of the 3 days rehearsing the courtroom scene, I spent in the back of the room with Terry Hatcher, because they had us standing almost next to each other. And I have this wonderful picture that was taken by a guy named David Hume Kennelly, who took all the photos on set. He actually did a book called The Sign Off, I think, about, it was a photo journal of shooting the finale. And I'm looking at it right now. It's taken like with the witness table in the foreground, and then you can see everybody in the courtroom all the way back. And I'm back there with Terry Hatcher by the door. And so I got to know Terry Hatcher really well just for 3 days. She had just had her first kid, and my son was about 5 years old, and we were just talking about our kids and everything and our careers. And I told her how I had auditioned for Lois and Clark 5 times and never got on. And, that was fun. And I think the funniest story, even though there was a lot of fun on the set, the funniest story was one day Brian George and Ian Abercrombie came up to me and they said, "Hey, we're going across the street to get some lunch. You want to come?" And I said, "Yeah."
And that's Babu and Mr. Pitt, for people who don't know.
Yes. And so we were all in our street clothes, and we walked out of CBS Radford Studios right on Radford and Ventura Boulevard in Studio City, and we were crossing the street to go to the Daily Grill to have lunch. And I noticed out of the corner of my eye, people were staring at us. But I didn't really put it together at all. And we went into the Daily Grill, and we were ordering lunch. And as very often happens with me, if they tell us they have a special with soup, and whether I order it or not, the waiter's always got a grin on his face. But we were sitting there eating our lunch, and I was noticing people in the restaurant were kind of looking at us and talking. And then it finally occurred to me. I said, "Guys, do you realize what's going on here?" And they said, "What?" And I said, "Well, nobody knows what's going on with the Seinfeld finale, but I think a lot of people know that it's shot in CBS Radford, and even people that don't, I think they're wondering why Mr. Pitt, Babu, and the Soup Nazi are walking around together." And they looked around them, for the first time, just kind of came to life and looked around and went, "Oh my God." So we realized that we were causing this major stir among Seinfeld viewers, going like, what are those 3 guys doing together?
Now, were there multiple takes of the ending during the course of the day so that no one really quite knew how it was going to end?
I don't know, because once again, when the verdict came in, I think they did have 2 endings, because I don't think they even were decided on how it was going to end. So, but once again, none of us ever saw a full script of the episode. To this day, I don't have, I think they promised to give everybody a copy of the script, but it never happened. So to this day, I've never really seen that script.
Once again, you're listening to AM 1460 WXBR. We're chatting with Larry Thomas, the Soup Nazi, here on the 15th anniversary of Seinfeld's last episode airing on NBC. Larry, what was your reaction to the reception to the final episode? Because And it was very funny, but it was a little bit mixed in terms of reaction because the show had so many classic moments throughout the years. I think that people were expecting the greatest hour in the history of comedic television to just send the show off, and they kind of set the standard so high in the previous 9 seasons of the show's existence, it was almost impossible to top what they had already done.
Well, in the years since, I've spent a lot of time with Seinfeld fans because unlike probably all of the other guest actors that were on the show, for some reason, the Soup Nazi has turned into kind of this weird icon for personal events, for charities, things that Sony does to promote the show. I've thrown out baseballs in Major League Baseball games, and I've just spent a lot of time meeting and greeting Seinfeld fans. And the controversy over the finale is funny. I would say it's about 50-50. 50% of the Seinfeld fans I meet loved it, and 50% of them didn't like it at all. I think a lot of the people that didn't like it, the feeling I get from them personally is they're the people that loved the show for all those seasons but never got it that these were 4 really horrible people.
that was the basis of the show.
They were identifying with them and thinking they were all so cool. And then when they got thrown in jail, they were really upset about it. But I think the ones that really loved it were all the people that realized that these are 4 really terrible people. They deserve to be punished.
Innately selfish people who take joy in the ailments of others, it seemed, in the last episode.
Yeah. But one aspect of the finale that has never really been publicized, I just talk about it because it affected me personally. I went to New York with Maxim magazine, took me to New York for the finale. They had a party at Tom's Restaurant, which, of course, was Monk's, the diner where they all hung out.
The actual diner where they hung out in the show. You went to the actual diner in New York?
Yeah, Tom's Restaurant, which is on 110th and Broadway. And Maxim had the place tricked out for a huge, major party. They had gigantic screen television sets inside and outside, and they had it all roped off. And, of course, there were tons of models and all kinds of people that would be at one of their parties. And I was the guest of honor from Seinfeld. And there was pretty much every media outlet you can imagine. There was like a police barricade, and they were all, lined up, outside on the street waiting to interview. Mostly me, because I was the Seinfeld person. Like Entertainment Tonight and Access Hollywood, and then all the Fox News channels and media magazines and radio stations. And so I spent most of the evening doing a lot of interviews. And then I got a lot of business cards asking if I would spend the next day, Friday, just going from studio to studio and doing sit-down interviews and recapping the finale and talking about it. So I was going to be busy that entire next day. And so we actually changed my plane flight to go back later. And that next morning, I woke up in my hotel room, and I turned on the TV expecting to see a lot of these interviews and things that had gone on the night before. And I was waiting for a phone call from, I think, one of the Fox stations that was going to come pick me up. And I turned on the TV, and there was Frank Sinatra singing. And I went, oh, cool, Frank. And then I switched to another channel, and there was Frank Sinatra singing again. And then I switched to another channel, and there was Frank Sinatra singing again. Well, I may be a little slow, but I got it. Frank Sinatra died. And the phone rang, and it was the Fox people, and they just said, I don't know if you've heard, but Frank Sinatra passed away at 11 p.m. last night. And so pretty much all other entertainment news is going to be on hold today. It's going to be pretty much an all Frank Sinatra day. And so we're not going to be needing you. So then
Old Blue Eye stole your thunder.
Yeah, oh, God, Frank, how could you? And then the phone rang, and it was everybody that had given me their cards telling me they weren't going to be able to do anything. So I just kind of walked out into Central Park and looked up and went, Frank, I've listened to you for so many years. How could you do this to me?
Oh.
But he did. People don't remember that. Frank Sinatra passed away pretty much the second, I guess, the Seinfeld finale ended.
Maybe he was disappointed by the ending. Who knows?
Yeah, he was in his hospital room at Cedars-Sinai and just went, damn it, I'm going. That's it. But it really did happen, and it was just this. So pretty much the next day, there really wasn't any Seinfeld news. Nobody was talking about the finale, and I think that stole a lot of the thunder away from the finale as well. Although it's not really remembered that it did. I think it did. I remember looking for articles about it in some of the local New York papers, and it was all Frank Sinatra.
Once again, we're chatting with Larry Thomas, the Soup Nazi, here on AM 1460 WXBR. Larry, you portrayed the character of the Soup Nazi twice during the 9 seasons that Seinfeld ran on NBC, but you've portrayed the character many times since, including an Acura car commercial that aired during the Super Bowl alongside Jerry Seinfeld. You mentioned that earlier in the interview. What has been your rapport with Jerry Seinfeld over the years, and describe the scene of sharing the set with him once again for that car commercial which aired during the Super Bowl?
Well, Jerry was very nice to me when we did the show, both times. I have always told this really cute story of me. I brought my Soup Nazi script to the finale with me, and I wanted to get everybody to sign it. But getting Jerry to sign it was really difficult because the man was so unbelievably busy. I mean, the second a rehearsal would stop, a line would form in front of him with things to sign, cell phones, different cell phones for him to talk to people that were waiting and so forth. And I remember at the end of the whole thing, they threw a little party at about 3 o'clock in the morning, when the audience left. And, I came up to Jerry and I said, listen, I don't want to bug you right now, but I've got my Soup Nazi script and everybody else has signed it. And he goes, yeah, I really want to sign it, so just get it and bring it to me. And I went and got it, and every time I saw him, he had like a cigar in his hand or a drink or some food or something. So I kept waiting and waiting, and finally at about 4 o'clock in the morning, I just went up to him and I just said, could you put everything down, please, and just sign this? I want to go home. So he did. He was great. He put all the stuff down, and he wrote to the icon and signed it. And so he was always very nice. And I hadn't seen him at all since the finale because we just don't run in the same circles. There's never been any cause for us to run into each other. So when I went to do the commercial last year, I walked out. They put me in costume and whatever, and I walked out on the set, and there he was. And he goes, hey, man, thanks for coming down and doing this. And I said, well, Jer, healthcare and pension point. And he kind of almost laughed, but then looked at me like, huh? And I went, healthcare and pension point. This spot is going to get me healthcare for a year and a pension point for the Screen Actors Guild. And he just kind of looks at me like, oh, okay, sure, that's great. He had no understanding of that.
And you had told him, you told us previously in the interview, you had told him that character more or less changed your life.
Yeah, and I got to tell him much more because we were, working slowly but surely on this one scene all day where, we're at the guy's door who has the keys to that Acura that Jerry wants, and, he goes I own all the characters. How about the Soup Nazi and whatever? And so we got to talk a lot, and I got to tell him, you have no idea what this character has done for my life. It is my life now, actually. My life is the person that played the Soup Nazi. It's not Larry Thomas, whoever that was. And I said it affects my son in school. He called me once from high school on his cell phone, and I said, where are you? And he goes, I'm in school. And I said, you're not supposed to be using your cell phone in school. And he goes, yeah, well, my PE teacher wants you to yell no soup for you at him. So, things like that. And we got to talk a lot. And as usual, working with Jerry was always really cool because I told you that when I first got cast and he had kind of a different vision of the character, when we met on the set, when I met him on the set for this table read, he came up to me and he said, you know what, forget about the direction I gave you. Just do what you did when you walked in. It was funnier. And when we started working on this commercial, my line in that scene was soup for you. And so we just did a quick rehearsal of it. And he said, do you want to try it? Like now he's really nice, like he's turned nice. And he goes, hey, soup for you. And I said, you know, Jer, and I just told him this story about how for the past 15 years or so, I have been fighting people wanting me to do promos for the show, or when we did promos for Mattel for the Seen It version, the Seinfeld version of Seen It, all wanting me to like do promotions and take the Soup Nazi out of character. And I said, I have fought tooth and nail with directors and producers and even, you know, offered to just give them their money back and not do it, because I've always wanted to keep the Soup Nazi exactly like he was on the TV show, you know, and the only way he would change characteristics is if it was on an episode of Seinfeld. And I said, so I think that because you're saying you own all the characters, I think he's still the same guy. It's just that you own him and he knows you own him, so he has to do this. So I said, I think he would be very reluctant about saying soup for you, as if it's painful. And he goes, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Do it that way.
The psychology of the Soup Nazi.
Of the Soup Nazi. Well, it's true. When they did season 7 got released, and I did a bunch of promos for Sony and for internet, you know, for different internet companies like Amazon and Groupon. Grouper was the company. They wanted me to go like, hello, this is the Soup Nazi, you know, buy season 7 of Seinfeld and all this stuff. And I said, no, he wouldn't do that. And I said, really, I think that you should get someone else and, you know, another character. And he said, well, why? And I said, well, the Soup Nazi would not willingly, you know, promote a TV show. And he said, well, what would he do? And I said, well, we could do something that's, you know, an anti-promotion, like someone comes in and asks him if he'll promote season 7 of Seinfeld, and he goes, I don't care about season 7 of Seinfeld. I don't care that there's, you know, 22 wonderful episodes and lots of extras and behind the scenes. Get out! I don't care, you know, or something like that. And they went, okay, that works. So we did it that way, you know. And I've been just really trying to keep the character where he was all those years. So it's Jerry's sort of way to listen to something that makes sense and then change his mind, which means that all these years of being Mr. Big has really not gone to his head, at least when it comes to creating comedy.
Well, he's a man that certainly knows funny is funny. You're listening to AM 1460 WXBR. We're chatting with Larry Thomas, the Soup Nazi. We're going to step aside for a quick breather. Mike Pava is going to provide us with another news update. We'll be back and we'll wrap things up with the Soup Nazi himself, Larry Thomas. AM 1460 WXBR. Peter Czymbor still here with you on this Tuesday morning, and we're still joined via the telephone by Larry Thomas, the actor who portrayed the character of the Soup Nazi on Seinfeld, with today being the 15-year anniversary of Seinfeld's final episode premiering on NBC. Larry, this is a celebration of Seinfeld and its legacy. 15 years later, people still love that show. People still watch it religiously on reruns every day of the week.
I find that out. I would venture to say that people not only love Seinfeld in reruns just as much as they did when it was a first-run show, but now you have a couple of generations of new people that love it. I have 8 to 13-year-olds coming up to me and telling me how much they love Seinfeld. So and all the people that watched it originally still love it. I have people my own age that come up to me and say, if I'm flipping around the channels and I see a rerun of Seinfeld, I would rather watch that than most of the new shows that are on TV.
I completely agree. So, it's interesting. It's a TV show that, despite the fact that, you know, there was no references to the internet or cell phones or things of that nature in that show too much, whereas nowadays, if it was in existence, there probably would be. the comedy of the show is still so timeless that you can go and watch it time and time and time again. You'll find on a late night, 11 p.m., you'll be flipping through the channels, you'll find an episode you haven't seen in years. And the other thing about the show is there's so many storylines going into particular episodes sometimes, you'll forget that certain episodes sort of overlapped with just hysterical storylines involving multiple characters.
Yeah, there's always been an urban legend going around that there was more than one Soup Nazi episode, and I've had to explain to people plenty of times that no, it was all those things you're talking about all happened in one episode. You know, Spike wrote it that way because that's the style they were beginning to get into there. You know, originally, a lot of their style was things that could happen in one place, like a parking garage or a Chinese restaurant. But soon they started to discover that multiple storylines that would all dovetail together at the end. And Spike did it so well with the Soup Nazi that I have talked to tons of fans that think they were watching different Soup Nazi episodes.
It's amazing how much comedy the writers on Seinfeld could fit into one 22-minute sitcom.
Yeah, I'm still amazed by that when I think of all the elements of some of my favorite episodes. So, you know, it was pretty cool. And you know, one of the really funny things, speaking of my original episode, when we were working on that Super Bowl spot with Jerry, the second day we were sitting around the table of the diner thing. It's a little spot at the end of the commercial that I think was only in the long version, but it was sort of like the alien and the munchkin and the Soup Nazi and Jerry were sitting around in a coffee shop setting like on Seinfeld discussing what had just happened. And while we were waiting for a certain lighting setup, Jerry asked me a very interesting question. He said, you know, man, I've always wanted to ask you this. In your episode, in that first scene, the girl behind the register that took the bag away from George, who was she? And I said, oh, Marcia. And he goes, yeah, I don't remember her. And I said, you know why? Because she was an extra. And you didn't cast her or anything. It's just at the last minute before we really started shooting the show, Andy Ackerman decided that it was taking away the timing for me to step all the way to the register and deal with the money and, you know, deal with you guys and the dialogue too. So they just brought her in from the extra pool. And Jerry goes, man, she was good. And I said, better than good. I think she's the unsung hero of that scene. You know, the way she pulls the bag away from George is just, you know, takes years to learn that kind of timing, and she was great. So it was really fun to be able to tell Jerry a bit of trivia about his own show that he didn't even know.
I'm sure he was so involved in so many elements of the show, from starring the show, writing the show, being a producer on the show, that there's little details from the 9 seasons it ran that are probably just a little bit foggy to him, and it's interesting to know that you had to fill him in on some of the details of a show in which he owns.
Yeah, it was funny. But yeah, he was, and he edited the show too, so he was crazy busy.
When did he sleep during that time period?
Yeah, I have no idea, you know, especially considering at the finale, the party that we threw afterwards, after we finished shooting it, that he was still there at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I was the one that was going like, I'm tired, I got to go home. But it was amazing.
He probably knew he would have the rest of his life to rest, considering all the money he made off that TV show, and would continue to make in years later.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Once again, we're chatting with Larry Thomas, the Soup Nazi, here on AM 1460 WXBR. Larry, we've talked about some of the personal appearances you've made post-Seinfeld as the Soup Nazi. You mentioned throwing out the first pitch at a Major League Baseball game. We talked about the car commercial you did in the Super Bowl ad with Jerry Seinfeld last year. What are some of the more unique appearances you can remember making as the Soup Nazi post-Seinfeld?
All kinds. In the past few years, Sony has done some interesting promotions. Last year, and we were there in Boston, we went around with the Seinfeld food truck, which was sort of a roach coach that gave away black and white cookies, muffin tops, Snickers bars.
All references to the show.
And that was a lot of fun, and it was sort of a meet and greet with fans. A couple of years before, when Mattel came up with the Scene It game, the Seinfeld edition, Sony went around with a college tour with a Seinfeld museum bus where, kids from college could go in and see the puffy shirt on display and all kinds of other interesting things. And then they can go in the back and play the Scene It game. But I think the most fun thing I've done with the Soup Nazi wasn't exactly an appearance. It was a commercial promo, and you could still see this on YouTube, for Mattel for the Scene It game, and it was called the Soup Nazi Auditions. And so if you go to YouTube and put in the Soup Nazi Auditions, there's 1 and 2. One of them is the Soup Nazi taking on all the other one-liners from Seinfeld that are attributed to other characters, but as the Soup Nazi. And then the other one, which is my favorite, is the Soup Nazi doing one-liners from famous movies, famous movie characters, but always as the Soup Nazi. So it was like, it opens with me being Sharon Stone from Basic Instinct, doing the whole leg crossing thing, and I've got like her sweater on and stuff, but I've got the Soup Nazi kerchief on. And then I do another one where I was Robert Duvall from Apocalypse Now. So I've like got my shirt off and the Ranger hat on, but the Soup Nazi kerchief on as well. And it was really out there, but the director let me stay in the character of the Soup Nazi, just doing these other lines and stuff. So that was by far and away the most bizarre thing I've ever done.
I saw some interesting items that people wanted you to autograph for them in years past. It looked like for a while you were signing a lot of soup ladles. I
still am. I still sign my soup ladles. You can find them on my website. It's realsoupnazi.com is my website, and the Soup Nazis, soup ladles are there. I also have them on eBay. They're huge. I mean, people just love those, and I guess I'm the only person in the world probably that signs the inside of soup ladles.
Yeah, I can't think of anyone else where it would be apropos.
Yeah, so it's a little niche I've kind of found all for myself. So yeah, I still do that, and still do autograph shows. I'm going to be up in Niagara Falls on the Canada side, June 8th and 9th at the Niagara Falls Comic Con. I'll have my soup ladles and my photos and all that stuff. So yeah, it's really become a whole existence of. I judge a lot of soup contests for charities and can drives and things like that. So, but you could see all that stuff on my website, realsoupnazi.com. And right now, I'm working on it, but I'm working on a book. It's not exactly a cookbook, but it's sort of anecdotes and stories about my acting career mixed in with recipes, things I've cooked, things friends have cooked, and recipes I've picked up through the years because I do cook. So I'm kind of working on that right now as we speak.
Well, we'll have to definitely have you on again when that cookbook or that book in general is about to be released. Larry, you mentioned earlier on in the program that during your initial run as the Soup Nazi on Seinfeld, you still had a quote-unquote real job. Are you able to be a full-time Soup Nazi at this point?
Yes. Luckily for me these days, between the Soup Nazi and new acting roles, I'm pretty much able to survive that way.
What other roles are you currently portraying outside of the infamous Soup Nazi? What other work have you done post-Seinfeld, non-Soup Nazi related?
Well, after Seinfeld, I did a lot of TV guest spots, but because I'm a character actor, the characters were not anything like the Soup Nazi. So you may have seen me on CSI or Arrested Development or Scrubs or something and just not known it was me. But lately I have a few independent films that are out there that I'm really proud of. I think the one I'm most proud of is a Western, and it's called Redemption for Robbing the Dead, and you can get it on Netflix. And it's a really good movie. It's got Barry Corbin in it, and Margot Kidder, and Rance Howard, and Edward Herman, and some other people. And it came out really good. It's a very good film. And in that, I play Josiah the Wagon Grunt. And I'm just this gross guy with brown teeth and dirty hands who likes to spit in the bucket of water that I dish out off my supply wagon. He's really gross.
Well, outside of being known as a Nazi, you're probably the world's most beloved person to be referred to as a Nazi, by the way, Larry, which I think is a compliment. You've also portrayed the characters of Osama bin Laden and Saddam Hussein. So you've been a Nazi, you've been Osama bin Laden, and Saddam Hussein. You've been a dictator, a terrorist, and a Nazi. Look at you as an actor.
I know my Jewish mother just loves it. She has the best time with that. That's the irony. But Osama I did in a movie called Postal, which it was a comedy, so it was a comedic Osama. You could probably Netflix Postal as well. And I played a Saddam Hussein lookalike on Arrested Development, which was a lot of fun. On Scrubs, I got to play myself. I was Tara Reid's boyfriend, and I was me, and Zach Braff was trying to get me to say no soup for you, and I wouldn't. It was a lot of fun.
I was going to say, you were actually Tara Reid's boyfriend?
Yeah. Believe me, you have no idea how many website hits I got after that aired. Guys from all over the world were going like, I can't believe you were with Tara Reid. And it's like, TV show, guys.
He's
NBC,
acting, folks.
Don't
He's
worry
acting.
About it. But it's been fun, and you could IMDb me to see most of the stuff is on IMDb.
Well, we've been chatting with Larry Thomas, the Soup Nazi, here on AM 1460 WXBR. Larry, tonight is the 15-year anniversary of Seinfeld's final episode airing on NBC. 15 years later, the show is still going strong in syndication, reruns, DVD sales, just as popular as ever, if not more popular than it was during its initial run. Any final words for our listeners this morning on the legacy that Seinfeld has left behind?
I guess just, keep watching the show and keep enjoying it. I think we're all finding out that it had legs like some of the great sitcoms that still have legs today, like I Love Lucy and The Honeymooners and the Dick Van Dyke Show. It's really cool to be realizing that possibly Seinfeld is in that same ballpark. And I just say keep enjoying it. I still do. I still watch the reruns when I'm passing by them, when I'm flipping the channel. So, keep watching it. It's keep it going. It's just a great show, and it's holding up after all these years, and I hope it continues to hold up.
AM 1460 WXBR. We've been chatting with Larry Thomas, the Soup Nazi, here on this Tuesday morning. And Larry, before I let you go, I have to ask, can you give us a no soup for you?
Yes, I can. No soup for you.
No soup for us, indeed. Larry, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
My pleasure.
That's Larry Thomas joining us here on AM 1460 WXBR, the Soup Nazi. You're listening to the Metro South Morning Show. Peter Czymbor and Mike Pava here with you on this Tuesday morning. We'll step aside for a quick news break. Mike Pava will provide you with a news update from the WXBR newsroom. Stick with us, more show after this.